Imagine if you had to spend every second of every day for the rest of your life with one person. I'm sure you would hope that that person was someone who was interesting to be around. Well, there is that person, and you guessed it, that person is you. And in one sense, I kind of think that, at least on a personal level, that is what the big life journey question is about. How can we be someone that we want to spend forever with? We've all met people who grab our attention somehow and who hold it. Conversing with them and being with them is intriguing somehow. We are pulled in and we are curious. We've all also met people who make counting sheep sound like a fun activity. And I'm sure that I've made both of those impressions on other people as well. Now, sometimes I think there is this unexplainable thing that draws us to certain people. Or perhaps there is an explanation for it, but if there is, I'm just not aware of it. However, other times we are able to pinpoint what it is about someone. And so lately, I have been pondering the question, what is it that actually makes someone interesting? I personally think that what it fundamentally comes down to is how someone interacts with the world, regardless of who they are or what their life looks like. So let's break that down. And disclaimer, what's considered interesting is, of course, subjective. This is not a how-to guide. This is not a manual. These are simply some of my personal observations based on my personal experience, and for some reason, I felt like talking in third person today. So let me introduce to you Flynn. Being present. When reading, only read. When eating, only eat. When thinking, only think, said Song Han. There's no way I pronounced that right. I like to think of presence as color, where when we are not present, we are desaturated. Life is desaturated. Whereas presence brings out color and it makes it feel more vivid. Our experiences become richer, our interactions become richer, our entire lives essentially become richer. Flynn is fully there in every interaction that he has, well, sort of, but also with himself, in everyday life. He's able to fully engage with the things that he's doing, whatever it is that he's doing, and he participates as his life unfolds. And you can feel that when you talk to him, because the way that he asks questions lets you know that he's been listening. His description of things makes you feel like you were there, and he points out details that you hadn't even noticed. Now, what does it mean to be present? I know that it can sound kind of woo-woo. So to me, presence simply means paying attention. So if you're having a conversation with someone, you would be paying your full attention to that person, to what they're saying, to what you are saying. You would not be thinking about what you're going to have for dinner later, or you would not be looking at every single person walking by, or feel the urge to pick up your phone as soon as it vibrates. Now, depending on who you are and your situation, this is not always going to be easy. So for me personally, it's taken quite a bit of practice because my mind likes to wander away to another place and throw its own party. But when that happens, I just consciously bring my attention back to whatever it is that I'm doing. And then I do that again, and then I do that again. And however many times it takes to just focus and be there. Being open-minded. Flynn does not immediately dismiss ideas, perspectives, or experiences that feel foreign or uncomfortable to him. He will play pool, even though he's only played once and he kind of sucked at it. And he will listen to a podcast by someone who holds very different views than him. And he doesn't just wait around for his views to be challenged. He seeks that out himself by asking questions and by seeking out information that is outside of his comfort zone, instead of just information that confirms what he already believes to or wants to believe to be true. also known as confirmation bias. So if someone is like, hey, Flynn, you should watch this documentary. It's about this guy who researches pineapples, and he just found out that pineapples are actually grains and not fruit. So even though Flynn is pretty sure that pineapples are actually fruit, he will likely still be open to the idea because who knows? Perhaps there is a new science that shows that pineapples are actually not what we thought they were. Now, this is not to say that he is a yes man who sympathizes with every single idea or belief. He has some pretty strong beliefs and values of his own, but he realizes that out of 7-something billion people in the world, why the hell would he think that he's the one who's gotten it all figured out? Knowing stuff. General knowledge is beneficial in many ways, mainly for ourselves because it helps us make decisions and it makes us better equipped when we are out there facing the world. But it also benefits us professionally and socially. So Flinny Boy tries his best to keep up with current events and to consume media that he finds to be interesting, but he also makes sure to consume outside of his interest comfort zone, so to speak, having opinions of one's own. Now, I don't think that we need to have opinions on everything. It's okay to be indifferent. It's okay to keep our opinions to ourselves, and it's also okay to admit that we don't know enough about a subject to have an opinion formed. But if we find ourselves rarely or never expressing our opinions on anything, either to ourselves or to others, we might want to ask ourselves why that might be. So, are we afraid of getting judged? Are we afraid of someone disagreeing with us, of being disliked? Or are we simply passive and apathetic? And if so, is that something that we would like to look into? And when we do express an opinion, is it one that we truly believe in, or is it one that we think will please most people? An opinion that will make us accepted and liked. Are we simply repeating the most popular or socially acceptable opinion? Are we thinking critically, or are we hopping on a bandwagon? Telling stories. The very reason that I write is so that I might not sleepwalk through my entire life, wrote Zadie Smith. I think that quote almost perfectly describes one of the most important reasons for why I engage in so many different forms of storytelling, so to speak. I journal daily, I write for these videos, I film, I take photos, and the reason is because I believe that storytelling is quite possibly the most powerful communication tool that there is. Finding a medium to tell stories, regardless of whether or not you choose to share them, I personally recommend journaling, does, in my opinion, make life more vivid, just like how being present does, because it forces you to stop, to reflect, to go back, to think, to try and understand, rather than just zombieing your way through life. The way that we tell stories matters because the way that someone tells a story often translates to how we feel about the person and about what they're telling us. And it's the choice of words, it's the coherency, it's the body language, and it's the energy. Being authentic. This may be the most important point. I once met someone who was not a whole lot like Flynn, actually. Their mind kept wandering off, their stories were kind of all over the place and whatnot, yet I immediately caught interest in them. And part of the reason might have been this unexplainable thing that I talked about in the beginning, but I think more than that, it was their authenticity. They told me that they had difficulty keeping their attention focused, and they laughed through their stories and let me know that they could never remember things chronologically. And I think that's what authenticity is all about. You know, it's not about oversharing, but I think it's simply about not hiding or censoring or altering who we are. So for instance, when you meet someone new, you might go, yeah, I'm actually a bit nervous, because that's what you're feeling, and it's honest, it's real, it's valid. You know, but you may not have to go, so yeah, the reason I'm actually nervous is because when I was 13, this girl was very mean to me and she painted my toenails while I fell asleep. And so now whenever I'm around anyone who reminds me of her, I get nervous. You know, that might be a bit too much.